Hey guys, this will be video 13 for the Les Paul restoration, and I'm just going to dive right into our points here. I got cut off in the last video at the order of operations, and what I was going to mention is at this point you have to decide, or before I primed it, put the first few coats on there, you have to decide how much more work are you going to do before you start moving into the finish stage. And I guess what I'm trying to say is at that raw state, I could have gone ahead and done all the binding, and I could have leveled everything exactly to a finished state and had no primer on it or any paint or anything. And then I could have come in with tape. Make sure I'm in the video. Yeah, I could have come in with tape and I could have taped everything and then started building up the paint. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but I built a vintage Penguin replica based on my 56 Silverjet that I, again, was kind of in over my head because of the order of operations. I built the guitar, it's all beautiful, and I did all the detailed binding and had everything exactly where I wanted it, but it was still natural. And then I taped everything off and started painting and realized that the white was not covering very well, and I had to keep painting and painting and painting. And then by the time I took the tape off, the mill thickness of the paint had built up so much that I had difficulty making the transition from my binding into my painted body, which was now a different thickness. We're talking, thousandths, but nonetheless, it was a nightmare. And even to this day, I still have that guitar, but I look at it and I go, yeah, screwed up. Yeah, I should have done this, I should have done that. But, that's life, of course. But nonetheless, at this point, I'm not doing, and I don't do binding anymore until I get some of my paint or primers on. Now, I'll go ahead and do all my painting and priming. And just like I mentioned in one of the videos, this is my binding, or this is my binding point. Rather than using the binding itself as the point, just let the wood run, and then once I get ready to come in here and route for the binding, now I'm already pretty much close to a finished state. Now, one thing before I forget, I better hit on this. At this point, I wouldn't recommend maybe doing one more coat of primer and then sanding, leveling, priming, sanding, leveling. And if you did have a mistake, let's say we came up here with a file and we hit it and just, it is what it is. You got to come in with some filler and fill that in, sand it, work it, prime it, sand it, work it, prime it, and it'll never show. But at that point, I almost digressed, but at that point, don't take it too far. Because we still have a lot of work to do, and the last thing we want to do is really do let's say we're going to do 10 coats of nitro lacquer, and we take it up to 8 coats, and then we do our binding, and then we shoot it with 2 coats of nitro, buff it, sand it, then we shoot a couple of clear coats. Now guess what we have? We got a situation where we got to be extremely cautious now. One slip up and it's game over, or either you're moving into repair state. So I say that to say this. At this point, let's not do any more priming or painting, even though I'm going to contradict myself. And later on at the end of the video, I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go shoot a coat of primer on this, or another coat of lacquer, and then I'm going to come back and maybe talk about the neck a little bit, because we're at that threshold of where we need to start taking advantage of the time while this is hanging in the spray booth drying. Well, let's stay on point. Let's not lose any daylight. Yeah, let's keep working. So anyway, I think I drove that point home. Don't take it too far, because then your project will become so fragile that you'll be so wound up trying to keep from making a mistake that you can't either relax and enjoy the job. A lot of this conversation is just off the top of my head, and I'm just rambling a little bit. But again, these are things that are important. So do you do the binding and tape it, or do you not? If you're going with a painted color, I say, because it's such a heavy mill thickness, I say do all I do 80% of your painting, then do your binding, then go from there. All right, so let's move on. Paint / final shaping versus painting. That's what I just discussed. Route for the binding or weight. That's what I just discussed. Installation of the binding. I'm not going to go into that in this video because that's a total different world. This is very important. Is your ego in check? Now, in the last video, and I watched through the video and I thought, man, somebody that doesn't know my personality would think, what was this whole Jekyll Hyde thing with this guy? He just went from being, the real heart of a teacher all of a sudden to, let's get this thing finished. And I need to clarify, that's just my personality from being a contractor. I didn't have time to, be anybody's friend. I had to, keep the job going. And so that just comes out in my personality from time to time. But what I mean by that is my ego in check. Because the client, like I said several videos back, be careful about calling your client and suggesting this or suggesting that. You might catch them on a bad day, or maybe you might be having a bad day, and you don't want to end up on the road to El Dorado. So what I mean is my ego in check, and where I'm going to lead in from that is I have a question about this binding, and the owner of this guitar cannot answer that question, and I'm about 90% confident that I have the answer, but I'm going to put my ego in check, and I'm going to call Stuart McDonald, and I'm going to say, hey, I got an 80s, blah, 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 this is what I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. And you'll find that your tech support guys or the parts supply sales guys at the Napa Auto Parts or the O'Reilly's or, any of these motorhead shops, man, those guys are knowledgeable. And you'll be shocked that they have just as much knowledge as a vocational instructor or an Air Force, jet engine instructor that's teaching you how to build a jet engine. It's amazing how, I'm saying, put your ego in check and just go talk to the guy at the parts counter. And you'll be shocked. He'll tell you, oh yeah, that's a 10 thousandths binding, or that's a 15 thousandths, or that's a 20 thousandths. And then you don't have to worry about it anymore. You didn't make any assumptions and start gluing something on and have an oh crap moment where this binding is, I bragged about being able to blend in the binding, but now, oh wow, the binding is just, this binding that I'm holding in my hand is manufactured in 2021 or 2022, and this guitar was built in the 70s. There is a extremely small variation in blah, 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 and that now I should have, just ripped the whole binding off and rebound the whole guitar. So check with your suppliers. They're likely to give you a lot more support, again, than the forums. Stay off the forums. And I sounded kind of cold-hearted about the forums, but I mean it. 90% of those guys don't really know what I just brought up, or they haven't been behind the chisel, when Thursday's coming up and you got to make payroll, to 7 guys or to 5 guys. I don't have time to screw up. All right, so support shop or the forums, just spoke about that. Nitrocellulose lacquer versus enamel. Demo the sanding and the tack cloth work, then pause and prime the body. I think I'm going to briefly show you this just a little bit because I don't have it clamped down, and then I'm going to talk about different paint finishes. Let me check the phone here. Yeah, we're at 9 minutes. We're doing pretty good. I tell you what, before I do that, let's and that's the reason I set this up on the shelf so I wouldn't forget. At this point, this is where, let me see if I can change this a little bit and put it in the camera. Yeah, that looks okay. And that way you guys can kind of watch as this guitar morphs into a different guitar. What I mentioned I think I mentioned it in the last video, where I've got to make a decision. Let me see if I'm in the camera. Yeah, I'm in the camera. I need to start worrying about the camera. This is an anchor-based bridge stud, not the tailpiece stud. The tailpiece stud is a given. that's not what I was talking about, so I need to make sure I clarify that. That's going to get tailpiece studs. Whether it's this tailpiece stud with chrome or a different tailpiece stud with a nickel finish, a gold finish, you know, everything changes. But up here, I need to know from the owner of this guitar, if I'm the builder, what do you want me to do? Because I'm at a threshold. I got to know. Because I'm doing priming and painting and priming and painting, while I've got all this covered up here, it sure would be nice to know if we're going to put just studs in here, or if we're just going to pull this tape off and just put these little anchors back in. And if we put these anchors back in the body, then yeah, that made it real easy, right? Just like everything else, not necessarily. Because with this guitar, I don't have a bridge. If I had the original bridge, then I would say, yeah, we've got everything, we're in keeping with the era, and the owner's like, I don't care, that means nothing to me, man. I'm just, you know, I'm not as, you know, detail oriented as long as it stays in tune. So on that note, this is important. That's 4mm. This is not 4mm. This is from 1980. This is from 2022, 2021. This is nickel. This is chrome. The finish is not all that important. As you could see, I could put this nickel bridge on this chrome and even I wouldn't be able to see that. But look at that. It doesn't fit. So if you call your client and say, hey, I need a bridge, and the bridge has got to be Tone Pros, or it's got to be Gibson ABR, it can't be metric, or it can't be blah blah blah. I know my Tone Pros bridge slipped right over this and it was fine, but this is a Clouson. Let me check the camera. All right, this is a Clouson. It won't fit. So if the owner or your client, if you told the client, hey, I need you to provide all the parts, they're on eBay or they're online and they just see a bridge. All right, it's a Gibson bridge. And then they ship it to you. Now you're over at the drill press with cutting oil trying to magically make this thing fit. So be careful that you don't end up on the road to El Dorado and you the builder are eating. Nobody intentionally made a mistake. The owner didn't set out to put more work on you, but make sure you cover those things. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about that. But what I am going to mention, when I mentioned in the last video, if this is my guitar, I'm doing this. I wasn't being a jerk. I'm just saying, in the camera? Yeah. And the newer guitar, and anytime I started talking about the heritage, I'm not saying that maybe the Les Paul Custom was still considered the heritage. I don't know, because I'm not a Gibson aficionado. What I was referring to when I said heritage, I was kind of talking about the burst, the reintroduction to the burst. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if they did these anchors on the burst heritage. They may have. If they did, then that is what it is. But let me step back and look at that. That's what I'm talking about. That's what they would have done in 1954 or 59 or 58 or 60. You know, I think 60 might have been the last year they did that. When they reintroduced this work, they might have changed over. That I don't know. So I'm going to start doing some just piecemealing. And also, this is an enjoyable place to be in the job, because this is when you can turn your music on. This is when you can have a beer with your buddies and shoot the breeze about the gig last night, because you're not really doing anything that's going to hurt anything. This is where you can get back to being a normal person and not such a jerk. You kind of start playing with it and start asking yourself, let me look at the camera, you know, just, you know, what is it, you know, I'm having fun, this is exciting, you know, I'm going to do, maybe, this is a Gibson, let me see if that's in the camera, this is Seymour Duncan. Yeah, this is a SH4. This will be going to my other guitar that I'm building. So you can start, see if that shows up. You can ask yourself, if you've been kind of mulling over, you know, I'm thinking about doing the whole zebra thing or the zebra thing. Well, this video now lets you know, oh man, I hate that. That's ugly. Or, not me, I'm just saying in general. I'm giving you the opportunity to say, oh no, the black is just, no, it's wrong. Or that needs to have a nickel cover. You know, just do some, I'm hardly in the camera, but just start kind of thinking, what is it I want? Because what's about to start happening, you're about to start spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on getting this stuff finalized. This is getting to a critical point to where you don't want to make a mistake. Or, let me put this back up and just kind of keep the visual going. Yeah, looks good. It's like a Les Paul. Let me see. Maybe I'll pull it down just a little bit. I hope that's still in the camera. Or maybe, I'm not saying this is what I would do or would not do. Again, I'm indifferent. This is not my guitar. Would I do this? Would I not do this? Yeah, doesn't matter. It's not my call. But with this video, it kind of gives you the opportunity to see. Let me see if it's in there. No, it's alright. I just don't want to pull the camera off and start moving around and get all crazy. But all I'm doing here is just kind of giving the owner the opportunity to see, what does the cream look like on the black? Or if I flip this guitar over and it had a cream, cover on the back, would that bother me? Or maybe I love that. Maybe I think that's crazy. Maybe it's kind of cool. Maybe I'd do all this I might do black, cream, white, and maybe not. Maybe I just stay all traditional and obviously, not put a pick guard on it. But after you go online and you spend $100 on historical Gibson parts, then you get it and you go, oh, it looks like a checkerboard. Now what do? Well, you got to put those parts on eBay and sell them. And you end up, I don't know if I was on the video, you got to end up selling those parts. Or either you end up with a box full of parts and $300 more in a guitar than you should have had in it. Alright, what else do I need to talk about? So, that's what I was talking about. This is a great opportunity to make the decision. Whether you want to just put the stud straight in the body. Wow, I'm glad I thought of this. When I was studying the Robert Benedetto courses, one of his videos is related directly to the guitar bridge. The pitch of the strings. This is pretty important. I don't really have a straight edge. I use it. Oh, I do too. I don't want to take that apart. Alright, just read my mind. The pitch of the strings off the back of the bridge going down. A lot of people claim, oh, the steeper the pitch, the better the tone. It's been proven wrong. But one thing that is true, I gotta get a straight edge. One thing beyond a shadow of a doubt, if the strings are coming off the fretboard and they're coming up here on the speaking link, that angle in relation to the body and the bridge, once those strings come off the back of these saddles, if it goes straight down, it's one thing. If it goes through the body, that's one thing. Yeah, it'll start affecting tone. But one thing that really affects tone, if the pitch starts getting too high in the back. And these guys that do this whole string wrap above the bridge, in other words, you put the string in from the front and just let it come out and then wrap over the bridge, what they're trying to do, they're following this myth, whether it's a myth or whether it's truly true. They claim that the strings feel a little bit more slinky, a little bit more movable, because there's not so much bite of down pressure from the saddles down to the tail piece, or either the body string, the strings through the body situation. So I've already checked. The B3 would not work on this guitar. You got to go with a B7 if you were doing a Bigsby. And then we run into the problem of this. The Les Paul is so short from right here to right here. By the time you get a Bigsby on here, and then the Bigsby has the hold down bar, man, the strings are coming off the back of that tail piece. They're nearly on a 45-degree angle. And then I don't care, you're going to have tuning instability. That's why I've never liked a B7 Bigsby on a Les Paul. It looks great, it's cool, but I don't know if the tuning stability is there. So I probably talked a little bit too long about that, but where I was trying to get at was, I'm not really sure what I was just trying to get at, other than making sure that I verified that we talked about the pitch. making sure that probably what I was going to mention was that we make sure that we get this adjustment proper, so that you don't want to have to bring the bridge up really high in order to get a slinky feel. If you want to wrap it and then drive the tailpiece all the way down the body, that's your call. That's just a matter of loosening or tightening these in the back. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about that so I don't keep rambling, and I'm just gonna get this stuff off of the bench so it's out of sight, out of mind. All right, 20 minutes. It's amazing how quickly it goes. Do I need to talk about the body anymore? Do I need to talk about... I'm going to change gears a little bit because I talked a little bit more about that than I was expecting. At this point, this is dry. And when I talk about the nitrocellulose lacquer versus whether I would do an enamel, you're going to see why I'm going to recommend the nitrocellulose lacquer. Let me see if I can just kind of get this in the camera. And I'm going to... believe it or not, I'm not going to say anything other than very soft. Don't push down. Make sure I'm in the camera. Yeah, looks good. Don't stay in one spot sanding. You'll create a hot spot. Barely putting any pressure down at all. Let the tool do the work. Stoop down, look at it a little bit, see if you see any imperfections. If you do see like a valley, then just kind of make a mental note of it. As you do a couple of strokes on the sandpaper, you'll find the high spots and the low spots. And I don't know if that's showing up on the camera. I was fooling around with the lacquer last night and I dropped a piece, just a little dribble of lacquer went boink and landed on the body. So I had to come in and kind of sand it and fill it and drop. Then I took the black paint on a toothpick and just dropped it in there and made a little puddle. Let it dry overnight. Had a little divot over here, did the same thing. I don't know if that's showing up in the camera. I don't know what you guys can see through the camera, but from my line of sight, looks like a supermodel. It's incredible. And it's very rewarding as the builder to know, it's going to sound arrogant, I hit that the first time. That's pretty cool. That's, not many people can do that. What I'm doing, I'm knocking off the gloss. Or if I get to a point to where I keep sanding and keep sanding and keep sanding, and there's a spot that stays glossy, well, what does that mean? You have to ask yourself instinctively, wow, what does it mean? Why is that gloss still there? Because it's a low spot. That's what I talked about earlier. I'll deal with that later. It's not important. I could leave it and it wouldn't even matter. I put the tailpiece over and it covers until somebody got in here and looked up in there and said, wow, what's that line? I'll deal with that later. All right, let me see if I can make sure I stay in the camera. Where am I? 24 minutes. I'll go ahead and do. I'm trying to do this so that you guys can kind of see how I'm. And this is the point where I think in the military they talk about don't get killed eating a candy bar. I'm not going to explain that. All the military guys will know what I'm talking about. Very gentle. I'm still kind of taking a reading, a visual reading, and a mental mapping. 25 minutes. All right. See some low spots right there. Pretty serious. Again, I'm looking at it as a machinist would look at it. Probably. Now also I left tape up there to keep it covered, so I might have left that. Oh yeah, it's not as low as I thought it was. Can still see some of our transition work right there. Don't panic. Don't start sanding down to try to get rid of that glossy low spot. Leave it alone. Well, the next time you shoot a coat of primer or paint on it, it'll bring that up. It'll fill that in. Oh God, I made a mistake. I just sanded off the corner. Doesn't matter. You're going to do binding there, right? All right, let's flip it over. Let's see if we're still in the camera. Let me see if I can just hold it up and let you see it a little bit. That's the crazy thing about black. It's hard to see. You can see it coming together. And I'll explain that amber color in a little while. Sorry if I got loud just then. My voice was right in the phone. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about it right now. That amber was a means by which it allowed me to save my... I got a little bit of a blush right there. I got too thick. Study amine blushing. Got a little bit too thick when I was spraying it. But when I was looking at my black, which is tinted, I'll show you in a second. And I might not be able to prime this in this video and then restart the camera back up. But I did my first couple of coats of black, real thin, cut about 40%. And then I got the thing, I was like, well, I don't want to waste... I'm getting low on my lacquer. That's what I'm trying to say. My nitro, I only had about that much in the bottom of a quart. So I'm thinking, do I spray every bit of this work with just black? Like, no, man, I had a can of Baleine's Starcast Amber, and that I only use for a very small amount of tinting. So I did like 2 coats with that, just to kind of build it up. So, you know, could have painted it white. If you have some Daphne blue, paint it blue. Who cares? You know, it's just base coat. You're just building up primer. Still in the camera? Yeah. All right. I might be talking too much. Let me just kind of wipe sanding. If you make a mistake, if you round off a little bit of the paint, don't worry about it. You got, again, we're just getting it to a point where we can fit. This is helping us finish the project. And this is kind of one of those points where stop massaging it. Don't fall in love with it. Leave it alone. Don't get all excited. And if you see a little bit of a line showing where we made the transition, well, work it out a little bit. But don't drive yourself crazy. All right, let me look at my list. Nitrocellulose lacquer, demo the sanding technique, which I did. Pause and do a little bit of priming. I can't get rid. All right, 28 minutes. Probably got about 2 or 3 minutes. I'll try to keep from breaking this. What is this right here? This is, get this in the camera. That used to be known as Baleine's 1406 M610. Are these the best thing in the world? Pretty darn close. You'd be surprised. These are amazing. Home Depot, off the shelf, I don't know, $6, $5 or $6. The little canisters don't last very long, but it's worth it for the professional misting that you get out of the spray. This is let me make sure I'm in the camera. Yeah, I'm in the camera. You put your lacquer in the bottom, then you cut the lacquer with a little bit of acetone or lacquer thinner. Nothing else. Don't use anything else. Don't use alcohol. Don't. Well, I'm not going to start talking about that. This is a glass jar, and you can see, man, that's black. That's black. How do you tell when you've got a good consistency? If this were enamel in this can, I'm going to make sure this is tight, because if you shook that